Live from Capitol Hill, it's Friday, the 6th of March, year of our Lord 2020. It is War Room 2020, episode 23. It is 241 days in a wake-up, and what a day it is. Every day we're on here, Jason, it seems like another historic day, either impeachment, coronavirus. Now it's the merger of coronavirus, the economy, politics, and the world's capital markets, as we are in the middle of a world capital markets meltdown. On the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem Broadcast Radio Network, America's Voice, the platform of the Trump movement throughout the nation and the world, FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago, in the greater Chicago metropolitan area. We're honored to be joined today by Bill McGinley. Is this the first time you're back on? Your first time on 2020? You were a regular on impeachment.
Yes. No, I was on 2020 a couple of times.
Okay, fine. It just all blends together, right?
That's right.
We're going to get him on pandemic, right? We're going to get him on pandemic. Bill McGinley, Cabinet Secretary for President Trump in the first term, has joined us. Keep calm and carry on. Is it not, Mr. Jason Miller? This is what the world capital markets ought to know, because this morning we actually had amazingly blowout numbers on the economy. It shows you the underlying Trump economy and what he's trying to do economically is working. These numbers, the labor numbers, came from the Labor Department today, absolutely epic. And if you looked at the undercard for Hispanic employment, wage growth, you look at construction, it ties directly back to the great housing announcement last week. We had the best housing starts housing announcement, I think last Wednesday or Thursday. The best numbers since before the meltdown in 2008, and most of that housing towards the latter part of it, I think these numbers are the best since 2007, were all ginned up by the funky financing vehicles that Wall Street came up with. This is like true, low interest rate environment where housing starts really start. Tied today to construction jobs. I think construction jobs like 70 or 80,000, high value added construction jobs, and the report had very little funky stuff in there, like people hired to do the census. It had some of that, but overall, Jason, so before we get to the meltdown of the reality, the underlying, and this actually is going to give us, which Trump won't get credit for, but it'll give us a cushion to take the blow of the coronavirus.
And I think this is also important to juxtapose against the numbers we're seeing coming out of China. Even the formal pre-coronavirus explosion, we saw that their economy was already starting to take a big tank. I mean, they were talking about those PMI numbers that were historic lows. But these February jobs numbers, I mean, the payroll employment increased by 273,000. Unemployment rate at 3.5%. I mean, we're basically at full right now.
Yeah, you're full.
And this is, labor force participation rates is 63.4. I mean, you have everyone this morning from Fox to CNN to MSNBC going through saying these are the best numbers we've seen in our lifetimes. I mean, the American economy is the best in the world.
One of the most important things is on the business channels, Bloomberg, CNBC, Fox Business, and then all the analytics on online. People are saying, hey, 173, maybe you get to something with a two handle in front of it, maybe 200,000, but people are thinking 173, 193. There was actually a gasp on Squawk Box when the number came out. When they announced it from, I think, the Labor Department, guys on the set go, what? It was that big. And once again, it's the texture of it. It's the component pieces of it. So, unfortunately, it's in the middle of uncertainty. Capital markets one thing about the stock market. The stock market is the present value, the net present value of future earnings. Theoretically, that's the theory of it. And so what people like is some sort of certainty so they can program out what the program is going to be. So you can lay out revenue streams. You can lay out your cost structure. You can lay out then your earnings forecast and your dividends forecast. And uncertainty in this uncertain market. I think it's pretty evident, though. As I said the other day, this is not a balance sheet problem. It's not a capital markets problem. The rate cut, and I think people are going to look back, that was the first emergency cut since 2008, 50 basis points. You might like to have that one in your back pocket in the coming months ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, to your point, this is not a liquidity problem. I mean, it's not as though people are going to say, you know what, China's looking really good right now, or let me go and put my money in India's stock market. The U.S. is still the place to go. And when we talk about the fundamentals of the economy, it's so strong. I mean, the jobs projection was 175,000. Then we come in at 273. This isn't just a little bit around the edges. This is massive, explosive growth. The issue is the coronavirus.
Yep.
And the issue is what this is doing to the economy, what it's going to do to not just the travel industry, as
Yep.
we've seen that start to get hit. What happens when we see in Seattle right now where people are told just work from home? What happens?
So people should understand this. One of the reasons we started a pandemic was this historic event that was happening in Wuhan in central China, where eventually they hadn't even locked down the entire place in hardcore quarantine when we even started the show. But you're seeing in Seattle, Washington, 2 million people in the greater Seattle area. And some of Seattle, I would argue, is the second most important tech hub outside of Silicon Valley. Maybe, I think, more powerful now than 128 around Boston, and more powerful than Austin. So it's the second most important tech center we have. And everybody's supposed to work from home right now.
Yeah, and I'd like to go ahead and play Dr. Anthony Fauci was on Today's Show this morning. I want to play a short clip.
Head of NIH, one of the guys on the HIV vaccine that he's been working on for years, one of the SARS guys, NIH, a renowned expert. I've got a little problem with Fauci. Every now and again, he says one thing one day and the next thing, another thing the next day.
Well, and the other thing, too, and we'll get to this, but when we talk about preparedness and things like this, look, this is kind of your job, Dr. Fauci. And there have been, so we're going to come back to that. Let me go and play this.
Messaging. President Trump said, quote, "It's all going to work out," as we just heard in Tom Costello's piece. Do you agree with that assessment? And is the administration showing enough urgency here, Dr. Fauci?
Well, certainly the administration is showing urgency here. I mean, the task force meets every single day. We have conference calls, multiple ones every single day. This is 24/7 for us, so it isn't as if this is takenly. This is a serious issue. Again, it sometimes gets confusing for the American public because the overall risk in the country of getting infected is low. But as we've seen in Seattle, they now have community cases, and that's something that is a bit concerning, and that's the reason why they began the social distancing in Seattle in the state of Washington. So it's something you take very seriously.
If you had listened to a pandemic from the beginning, we are literally weeks ahead of stories. We talked about community spreading the very first time, talked about social distancing. Social distancing, what that means is either lockdown or quarantine. I mean, it means keeping your distance from people, but the way you do it overall is that you've got to go to some sort of lockdown or social.
That means
distancing.
You're not doing like Johns Hopkins, the Division III basketball. They've already said that they're going to play that game with no fans. So we're 2 weeks away, actually about just under 2 weeks, week and a half away from March Madness. Could we be seeing March Madness being played with no fans?
Trump, remember, I want to put this in perspective. President Xi says this virus is a demon and we cannot allow this demon to hide. And what they did is went full on to a full, we'll talk about this later, and also in pandemic, a complete lockdown and quarantine. President Trump, I think, has a very powerful message to the American people. Nothing is inevitable, but that nothing is predicated upon action. President Trump took bold action at the beginning to stop travel from China and also to do quarantine. McGinley.
I think that this is where we talk about beginning to capture the spirit of 9/12. If everybody remembers after 9/11, not only did the whole of government respond to that type of issue, but the American people practiced what they do best, which is rugged individualisms. Companies, small businesses, sole proprietors, family members, all started looking out not only for themselves, but looking out for others. We're not saying that we're there yet. We agree with the government that this is a low probability, but this is the time where Americans really rise to the occasion. We are the indispensable nation, and we're the indispensable nation because of the strength of our people. We've got a great leader in President Trump. Mike Pence is doing a terrific job leading the task force. They have the right members on the task force. Now is the time for them to up the game, but for the American people to feel not only empowered, but this is the time where you begin to say, look, if something is to happen, do I have what I need to take care of myself?
They need to bifurcate this task force. They have to have one on the virus, and they have to the economic task force has to be bifurcated. I've said this from the beginning. It's so complicated. The president needs two streams of information coming to him on the economics on the short term and the long term. Real quickly, we're going to go to break. Go to War Room. Hashtag War Room 2020. Also go downloads. We're almost at 3.4 million downloads. We want your comments, reviews. We take these to heart. As you notice, I try to cut off people less and try to let them talk. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, should the President of the United States today go to Tennessee or should he go to Atlanta to the CDC? Jason Miller, Bill McGinley would answer that when we return on War Room 2020.
War Room 2020. Bannon, Miller, Kassan.
Welcome back, live from Capitol Hill. It's episode 23, 241 in a wake-up. The presidential election and campaign has gone through a tectonic plate shift over the last couple of days. Now Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, is back among the front runners, and we're going to try to get some experts on the Democratic side next week to talk to us about Michigan, because it looks like Michigan is Bernie Sanders' Waterloo, right? You win, you go on. You don't win, you're going to get punched in the face the following week in these big states. Is that not correct, Mr. Jason Miller?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we talk about where this Democratic race stands, I mean, it doesn't look like Bernie has done anything to change the trajectory to give himself a real chance here. You have the governor of Michigan coming in for Biden. You have Alyssa Slotkin coming in for Biden. And also, too, I mean, there's a lot of speculation out there that Elizabeth Warren could get on board with Joe Biden. If she does that, then it's just game over. Then Elizabeth Warren's
Payback.
And there's also, too, when we talk about
she's Pocahontas and she's faux populist. She's just faux.
She's learned to love big money, that's for sure.
But look, this would
Be
check
hugging on some Wall Street.
Elizabeth Warren as a VP pick would check a lot of boxes for Joe Biden. As far as
the
that,
first box would be dumb.
We could only be so
It'd be
lucky.
dumb, exactly. But the first box would be real dumb, which is Joe Biden and his campaign. Okay, I want to turn back, but President Trump is actually running against, I've said for months now, running against a virus. This virus is both it's two things coming out of China, a virus and an economic contagion that talks about what he's addressed for his entire career, and particularly his administration. The entire thing of China is the railhead of manufacturing, the supply chain. So this is an enormously complicated topic, right? You have the most complicated thing of molecular biology. And I know all of us got A+ in molecular biology in college. Not
Sure.
right. I went to a military prep school, took it as a sophomore. My only biology class got a C from the football coach, right?
I took AP Bio.
Wow. Okay,
All
so
right.
you're the
Well,
expert. You're, by the way, so Jason Miller, the new co-host of War Room
That's
Pandemic.
right. Never the spare over there.
Okay. Well, by the way, we have Raheem. Speaking of the virus, we have Raheem Kassam on remote. Raheem, can you talk through the hazmat suit? Raheem Kassam is under. I know. By the way, I know 10 guys right now, 10 men and women that have what they call the flu. Now, all of them have been checked, but there is a flu bug going around because a lot of guys are down hard.
Yeah.
Raheem,
it's a bad one.
keep calm and carry on. So Raheem Kassam has joined us. I want to go back to the president today. What exactly is the travel schedule?
Well, that's a great question. So the president was planning on going to Nashville. Obviously, the
Very
horrific
horrific,
tornado.
yeah.
I think it was 25. I think that were killed.
Tore through so much of that.
It was just devastating. And again, there's so much news on the politics and the coronavirus. I mean, this is just. I mean, you lose 25 people like this in community. It's so crushing. So President Trump is heading to Nashville. Then he was going to the CDC and then finishing up the day in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. And then
Meetings tomorrow, and then he's got Bolsonaro for dinner.
Correct. And then the schedule went out this morning on the advisory, and CDC was off. So the press corps started freaking out. What's going on? President Trump then calls in the pool into the diplomatic room, as our Greg Mans in the war room quickly identified, and had a little brief.
And the people should know when they looked at that this morning and haven't noticed it. That's where we do a lot of practices for addresses and things like. It's right off where you come out. When people see when he comes out to the helicopter, I think it's on the main floor, just right off there to the side. And he was dressed like I've never seen President Trump ever, except down in Mar-a-Lago, dressed like he had his windbreaker on. I mean, it was like he was going on one of the FEMA runs he does to go down to actually go to one of the emergencies. I guess he's getting ready to go to Nashville.
Well, I think it was pretty clear that it was hastily organized because everyone started reacting to that not being on the schedule. They want to know what's going on. Because, look, this CDC trip has been on the books for about a week. Very important. You can't just cancel that without giving notice. So President Trump took a bunch of questions from the pool and went through and said that they were concerned that somebody at the CDC had the coronavirus, that was the potential there, that they wanted him to hold off, but now that turned out to not be the case. So he said they're trying to reschedule it as of just before the show starting. He was trying to get it, but it wasn't clear. It doesn't look like that's happening today, but he is trying to get that on the books. Critical, he goes down there and makes that trip, and they see the commander-in-chief walking through.
You were. Thanks for that cough there, Raheem. We do.
Checking. Just checking in.
Just jump in at a time, Raheem. I want to go to McGinley. You were cabinet secretary. That means you were the coordinator for the chief of staff of all the cabinet activities. Vice President Trump says we have a whole of government approach. You just said we need the 9/12 spirit, the rugged individualism of the American people pulling together, right? But also a whole of government approach. If you were there today, over this weekend, what would you be telling the other cabinet secretaries that are not part of the task force?
Get ready, because you're going to become swept into this task force. A whole of government approach means that not only are we going to be looking at the public health aspect of this to make sure that the American people are safe, but it also means the economic aspects. And you see in the task force, they're beginning to pivot toward that when they added Secretary Mnuchin and Larry Kudlow. I would expect others to come in because of supply chain and other issues that are going to happen not only in pharmaceuticals that we've been reading about, but also in kind of your basic consumer goods that people are going to start be looking for that are impacted by South Korea, China, etc. I also think that it also is going to mean a coordinated comms approach. At the end of the day, I believe President Trump and Vice President Pence, Secretary Azar, and the other members of the commission.
Are you implying that there's an uncoordinated approach right now?
No, what I'm saying is that in the message delivery coming out of the White House, coming out of the administration, it not only needs to be very factual, but it needs to prepare people for what could be coming next. It needs to prepare people so that they have notice to go do what they need to do. Rugged individualism is based upon actionable information that families can take, that small businesses can take, that large businesses can take. All of these large businesses out there are getting their own data on supply chain. They're talking to their shipping companies. They're talking to other people. They're getting real-time information about what's coming next. And for the federal government, that means preparing people for what could be coming next so that they can take the steps to get their families prepared and their businesses prepared. So I think as this thing begins to progress, if the risk remains low, the confidence of the American people in what the federal government is doing is going to be paramount.
If the message of President Trump, which is quite powerful, is nothing is inevitable. He reinforced this last night, I think, on the Fox thing. Nothing's inevitable. This is all about human action to combat both this virus. It's kind of keep calm and carry on. Don't get carried away on this. But in the coordinated messaging, when you lock in a CDC event like you had NIH, you got to keep it whether you want to go or not, right?
You got to keep it, or at least make very clear you got to be in front, because it's the confusion and the back and forth that goes and gets people unsettled. I think there are three things President Trump needs to do coming right out of the gate on Monday. Number one, I would love it if you went and announced its own standalone economic task force, the way that you've suggested, Steve. I'd imagine they'll do it within the construct of the current coronavirus task force. Keep that all under the vice president.
You throw Wilbur, you throw Navarro, you throw a few other
Correct.
people on an aspect. It all goes up through the VP to the president.
Yes.
So you got a unified chain of command.
Yes, and those additions are key, particularly Peter Navarro, because supply chain, as Bill pointed out, is everything right now. This is the concern. This is what everyone's worried about. So you announce.
I'd have to bifurcate. Have a short run one of them, Mulvaney run the other. Right, you got two chiefs of staff. They report right up to the VP, goes right to the president. Bang.
Yes, but the economic aspect of the task force is critical. I'll do that by release. Second thing I'd do is bring in the Joint Chiefs for a roundtable at the White House to show that military preparedness is on point. We're ready to go. We're focused, especially with that ship in the Gulf being quarantined. Show that everything is good and we're on lockdown there.
And also let people know we do have assets here that can be deployed instantaneously to help cities, help communities.
Third thing, and I think this is key for President Trump, I would either go to, say, Silver Spring or to Arlington, do a first responder firehouse visit. This is where the rubber meets the road. These are the folks who actually show up to these first cases of coronavirus as they pop around the country, to show how all of our local first responders are doing to be on top of this. They are the heroes in this equation, and we got to show that's how you show confidence. This is how the local folks are going to be dealing with this, and I think President Trump showing up to it.
But from a layperson's perspective, first responders now includes ER doctors,
yes,
absolutely,
nurses,
absolutely.
Right? So it's not just the firefighters.
We got to jump
police.
real quick for a break. We'll be back in a moment with the whole team.
War Room 2020 with Stephen K. Bannon, Jason Miller, and Raheem Kassam. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Episode 23, live from Capitol Hill, War Room 2020. Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary for President Trump, is with us in the War Room. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam by phone. We miss Raheem, but Raheem's under the weather, so he's in self-quarantine over on Capitol Hill. Raheem, how do people get engaged in the show, and particularly the hashtag War Room 2020?
Steve, I lost you there for a second.
Come back. I know you're making your tea now, having a hot tea or a hot toddy, knowing you. Is Morton's deliver, by the way?
This is becoming really strange because yesterday you said to me, I'm wearing my smoking jacket. That was true. Now you're saying I'm having a hot toddy. It's absolutely true. This is really getting weird, guys.
The Vulcan mind
a lot
melt.
of people, by the way, speaking of feedback and what's going on in real time, we're getting a lot of comments on the Twitter thread, #WarRoom2020. Jason, a lot of people liking your insight about the first responders and the optics of that, but also liking your style sense at the moment. Now, I'm not there in studio. You must be dressed pretty snazzy there, Jason. People can get involved at warroom.org.
This was an observation that was made before he went on camera today, Raheem, that Jason was very nattily attired with his... do you have any lead comments we want to talk about before I go back to Bill about the first responders, because he had a great idea? Anything else people are telling us?
Well, look, there's plenty of things on the hashtag on WarRoom2020, but since you brought your best financial guy on this morning in me, I wanted to discuss what we saw last night on MSNBC real quick on the Brian Williams and Mara Gay talking about how much money Michael Bloomberg spent on the race, and she's reading a tweet online and she says, Bloomberg spends $500 million on the race. That's enough to give every single person in America $1 million. And says this is evidence of why you need to get money out of the race. Now you have Brian Williams, George Washington University educated. You have Mara Williams at the New York Times, Mara Gay at the New York Times editorial board, also formerly of the Wall Street Journal. This reminds me of 2 months ago, guys. Didn't Rick Wilson and Don Lemon get on CNN and make fun of Trump supporters and say, we're much smarter than them. They don't like math, they don't like science, et cetera, et cetera. It's amazing.
Raheem,
Really
I have your clip that you posted on Twitter. Here it is.
Tweeted recently that money he spent, he could have given every American $1 million.
I've got it. Let's put it up on the screen. When I read it tonight on social media, it kind of all became clear. Bloomberg spent $500 million on ads. U.S. population 327 million. Don't tell us if you're ahead of us on the math. He could have given each American $1 million and have had lunch money left over. It's an incredible way of putting it.
It's an incredible way of putting it. It's true. It's disturbing. It does suggest, what we're talking about.
Hold it. Brian Williams, he's not a graduate. Remember, I don't think he didn't get a degree, did he?
That was Chuck. Didn't
I don't think check Brian Williams. I'm not sure if Brian Williams has a degree.
You could have given every American their own Chinook helicopter to go tour the war zone. Oh wait, that was his last fail.
Airheads. MSNBC
Steve,
Airheads.
Steve, you're right. He went to George Washington, did not graduate.
Thank you. By the way, the whole thing about these guys on the left, Chuck Todd, Brian Williams, all these guys, they're all college dropouts. They don't have degrees. They're not bright guys. They're not well educated.
Hey, GW does have some graduates who made it out of there.
GW
school.
It's a fabulous school. It's kind of a feeder school for Georgetown, right?
Having said that,
and Harvard. By the hold on. I'm not an undergraduate. I went to a populous mechanics school for undergraduate. I just got my union card from Georgetown.
I didn't get denied getting into Georgetown because I didn't apply. I just went right to GW. I just saved myself the $30 application fee.
Great move.
Hold on, but this is. I want to go back to Raheem, the Rick Wilson and these guys. They mock the deplorables day in and day out. And they sit there, and this shows you how out of touch they are with the even underlying math of the country, of what's going on.
And you remember from the 2016 rallies when the media would come out and mock the Trump supporters, the people you saw in the audience were teachers. They were engineers. They were accountants. They were lawyers. They were doctors. They were the people from the forgotten cities that the Obama administration had looked over in the greatest wealth transfer, as you looked at, who felt that they didn't have a voice. They watched their clients. They watched their patients have to leave their towns because there was no work available. President Trump gave voice to those people, and frankly, they are some of the smartest people in America. They are the most patriotic.
Okay, before we jump, we got about 10 seconds. What's more embarrassing, Brian Williams' goof here, or Brett Hume having the porn site up on his Twitter feed? Mr. Raheem Kassam.
Oh no! Look, I think the mathematics gap is the worst, honestly, because it's so dangerous. They're not off by a factor of 2. They're off by like trillions
Yes.
of dollars.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay,
Brett was just
These
buying
are
a
the
gift.
arbiters.
we're going to be right back with episode 23.
War Room 2020. Bannon, Miller, Kassan.
Episode 23, live from Capitol Hill, War Room 2020 on the John Frederick Salem Broadcast Radio Network, America's Voice.news, the streaming platform for the Trump Revolution, and FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago and the greater Chicago area. Bill McGinley, does Joe Biden now officially go in the witness protection program again? Because you don't want him out campaigning.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that the Biden campaign is working on right now is their surrogate programs. I don't think you're going to see him on national cable again.
So smart.
I think he's going to be doing some state and local regional stuff and print interviews, but they're not going to put him on camera.
The Bernie bros ought to get on the Biden campaign for not doing a Rachel Maddow interview. Bernie did it. He got jammed up by Rachel Maddow. She asked him that she framed that coronavirus question in a very cheap shot kind of way, and really hit him right in the face. And Bernie came back, but it's unacceptable that the Hannity of the left has not had Joe Biden on the show, and they're not making a big deal about it. I'd have the followers, the trackers around there all the time asking, when are you going to do Rachel Maddow? And then she's got to ask tough questions.
Absolutely. And look, there's a huge thing that the media is not talking about at all. A little bit today, David Ignatius over at the Washington Post, who's kind of the hater in chief.
Hold it. He is the Washington consensus. If you want to
Yes.
see what the Washington consensus is, just read his column or watch him on Morning Joe.
And yeah, on Morning Joe, and he's just the hater in chief on Morning Joe. He has a column out today in the Post where he says that Joe Biden needs to apologize for Burisma. And he goes through, and there's this devastating line in there. Biden and his son are going to have a confessional moment on this sooner or later. This is David Ignatius. Look, guys, we've been talking about the biggest thing in politics right now is Democrats have put all of their eggs in this Joe Biden basket. Nothing has changed. He's still a terrible candidate. He's not vetted. And President Trump made clear last night
And
he's coming at him guns
The one thing I
a-blazing.
want to say is the most optimal time for that to happen is right after the Democratic convention, before the Republican convention, the media dead zone when nobody's paying attention. It will occupy the news.
But I don't know if he's going to have time, because I think you saw it last night in the town hall. President Trump's best moments in the town hall were going full on Biden.
Oh, and these are going to be brutal body shots. Here's the president.
Look at the son. Here's a guy, didn't have a job, was unfortunately, sadly, the military was a very sad experience for him. He goes out, he gets $3 million plus $183,000 a month to be a board member of a company that a lot of people said was corrupt. Worse, just as bad, China. I just made a great China deal. China's paying us billions and billions of dollars because of what I did to them with tariffs. Billions of dollars. I mean, to a point where my farmers are in love with me because I took some of that money, gave it to them. But his son walks out of China with $1.5 billion for a fund. Now, $1.5 billion for a fund means he's going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and much more than that.
President's listening to War Room 2020, War Room impeachment. Forget the Ukraine. It's China. But now that David Ignatius is channeling Tom Fitton, David Ignatius channeling Tom Fitton, have to apologize. He and the son just didn't lay it on Hunter. Where's Hunter? He and the son have to apologize.
Exactly. And here's the thing. So Intercept journalist Mehdi Hassan was on MSNBC. And I got to play this real quick because this goes to the crux of it. Joe Biden has a Hillary Clinton problem on self-dealing and self-enrichment. Listen to this.
But the reality is, if you turn to Joe Biden and say, well, he's the safe candidate, I think you need to do a lot more soul searching, a lot more examining. This is a candidate who's not been vetted, really. In most of the debates, he's hidden in amongst the kind of 10, 12 candidates. He's not been asked about the bankruptcy bill. He's never really been probed about the Iraq war and his kind of turnaround on the Iraq war. And I just don't get why Democrats, as you pointed out to Barbara Boxer, think that you could just rerun the 2016 playbook and not think that Donald Trump will rerun his.
The Intercept, by the way, is trying to be the Breitbart of the left. Ryan Grimm and these guys are doing an amazing job. It's a must read. That brother right there lit up Joe Biden. That's the heart of it. He has not been vetted. If you go back, because I really started spending time watching him in detail in South Carolina, like I watched Camilla Harris and these others, all these things in South Carolina. Besides that one moment he had on the town hall with the preacher, which was quite moving and looked unscripted, and Clyburn, if you go and look at his daily thing, they're horrific.
Yeah.
He is a unvetted candidate.
Yeah, and the Democratic hangover for Biden is coming. right? As soon as the sugar high,
Buyer remorse?
buyer remorse.
How does that, okay, McGinley, how does that play out?
Because at the end of the day, he's still the Joe Biden pre-South Carolina. And as soon as all of the fire is going to turn on him from President Trump and everybody else, including the national news media, all of these flaws are going to be exposed and emphasized.
If you make up so many great memes here, you were the first guy who came and said buyer remorse the other day. When's it going to come? Hey, not that I'm pushing Hillary in the bullpen, stretching, or even Michelle at the convention. It's not going to be Biden. He's not going to be able to stand up. That's Trump in a town hall trying to be nice, okay, to nice people up in Pennsylvania. You unleash him on Joe Biden, it's going to be a standing 8 count, okay? It's going to be a standing 8 count.
Look,
they're not going to be asking, where's Hunter? It's going to be, where's Bernie?
And to that point, Ron Johnson chimed in. Then on Fox News right after the president, here's Ron Johnson.
First of all, I appreciate you using the words, we've been quietly percolating this investigation. My investigation into possible corruption in the Obama administration dates back to Hillary Clinton's email scandal. It was our oversight that ended up releasing most of the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page texts. I joined Chuck Grassley's investigation into possible DNC involvement with Ukraine to affect the 2016 election back in 2017. And so it's not our fault that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden got wrapped up in the whole Ukrainian story. But we're not closing our eyes to this. And I have no idea why anybody would object to us obtaining records from a U.S. consulting firm run by former Clinton administration officials that is basically using Hunter Biden's name to strong arm the State Department to curry benefits for a corrupt Ukrainian oil company. So.
And Ron Johnson's a straight guy. He's not a fire breather, right? He's not one of these guys out there always trying to take an edge. When do you think buyer's remorse starts?
I think it's going to start in just a couple of weeks. I think that as soon as he locks up what everybody perceives will be the presumptive nomination, when he starts to approach the 1,991 delegates and Bernie doesn't have a path, that's when it begins.
Here's how they're going to box themselves in. They're going to prove on March 10th and particularly on the 17th in places like Illinois and Florida, but particularly Florida, that Bernie can't win the big ones. That Bernie's not going to be competitive. Forget he's not competitive with Biden. He's not going to be competitive with Trump. Then they're in a jam. They basically have blown Bernie out, have disrespected the Bernie bros, and they got Joe Biden. They got El Cid, Joe Biden, right? Nail him to the saddle and let the Turks or the Moors get afraid of him, right? It's going to be brutal.
Yeah, that's Charlton Heston, right?
Yes, Charlton Heston, one of my favorite films.
Yes, so good. But no, this is the problem. I mean, Joe Biden has
Sophia Loren.
Yes,
okay.
Joe, that's okay.
It works. I watched Spartacus last night. Gene Simmons and Kirk Douglas.
That is a little bit of an okay boomer though thing. just to be on the level.
We'll be back, episode 23 in a second.
War Room 2020. Bannon, Miller, Kassam.
Bannon, Miller, Kassam, now McGinley, episode 23. Michael Bloomberg, Mini Mike, the oligarch. He's coming with $1 billion right now to put in back of Trump. Where's he putting it?
He's going into a super PAC, it looks like, and he's basically going to focus on the battleground states, and it's going to be 100% negative on Trump. The money train is coming.
It's going to be a money.
It's going to be incredible.
I think it's Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona. It's those 6, right? These are all. He's not going to say one positive thing about Joe Biden.
That's correct.
Because he doesn't need to.
No, doesn't need to.
This is just, he's going to drop heavy.
Right. And everybody's going to pay attention to the air war and the digital war that he's going to wage, and nobody's going to pay attention to the ground war that he's also going to wage on the ground.
He's going to. So all the deplorables out there in those 6 states, game on, okay? Because they're coming hard. Forget the DNC. This is Mini Mike the oligarch is coming hard. And by the way, they're more sophisticated on ground game than they even are on air game. And air game, they're tough. So this is the deplorables are going to have to lock arms, get a phalanx. This is going to be a war in those 6 states. Whoever wins those 6 states is president of the United States.
That's correct.
And Steve, you're exactly right. I mean, we're going to have to show that we have a better ground game than they do. And ours will be real people out there doing it because they care about the country. They care about President Trump. Bloomberg's people are all going to be paid. And it's going to be a passionless, army, because Joe Biden, if it's still Biden at that point, I mean, crooked might be in at that point by the time we get to the fall, but there's no spirit behind Joe Biden. This is why we all have to get out and work. Everyone needs the yard sign. Everyone needs the bumper sticker.
Look at how many delegates he got spending $600 million, right? He generates no passion, which is why he can't try and deliver a positive message. He's got to go 100% negative. And he's also somebody who tries to create organic movements by paying people $2,500 to tweet.
And how does he get around campaign law now? I want to explain to the audience. Now that he's got these PACs, walk through how can he put billions in? And I thought it was $2,800 a person what you could put in.
Yeah, but this is a super PAC. There's no limit on individual or corporate donations, no foreign national
What
money.
can they do and what can't they do for our audience?
They can basically do whatever they want so long as it's independent of the Democratic Party and for the candidates that they're
No
gonna
coordination.
support. Zero.
And what does that mean?
And that means that basically they're going to become their own ecosystem out there that he's going to fund that's not coordinated with the Democratic Party. Democratic Party's going to be putting out press releases and everything else to try and highlight the negative hits that they want him to do.
President Trump's going to have, it's got some super PACs guys coming at $25-50 million. These are big amounts of money, but dwarfed by this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's look, you see the way Bloomberg's been willing to open up and spend it. Bill, I want to ask you this question on the legal side. Is it even possible to have their own ecosystem and not be coordinating?
Yes. There's a lot of publicly available information out there that super PACs can look at, including the ad buys. People forget that there's a legal requirement for stations to put in the political file all of the time reserved and everything else, and they're able to go in and pull that file and see where they want to advertise.
Okay, we got to jump here in a moment. Any chance to read some of the things? And I want to ask you one other thing. Bloomberg's in play. We're gonna have to go. The Trump movement and the Trump campaign and the Trump PACs are going to have to make Bloomberg an issue here. He's got the oligarchs got to be an issue, right? Because any guy this is unprecedented in American history that a guy is going to come in because he's got a personal vendetta against the president of the United States and wants to take him out, right?
Yeah.
This is he is going to have to be addressed personally, his personal issues. Okay, we got to bounce. We're going to get pandemic's going to be up next. I'm asking Jason Miller staying because there's so much breaking news in capital markets. I want to thank Bill McGinley. You got a Twitter handle?
Yeah, WJ McGinley at WJMCGINLEY.
Okay, be back in a minute with Eric Prince and Jason on pandemic.